Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So chanting can be really nice. It can be a chance to shake ourselves out of ourselves. It's a way to get a little bit perspective, to just be less totally involved and enmeshed in our own stories about ourselves and our stories about other people, when you just let the voice come out and harmonize with the people around you. And similarly with meditation, it can be a chance to get out of ourselves, which can be great because so many of the machinations and churnings of our minds just really aren't helpful. The gears of our minds often turn without us really. We didn't see how we started this thought process, and we don't oftentimes realize how much friction it can cause to ourselves when it's just turning in the background. There's a principle in psychology called the overview effect. It's also called the blue dot effect, and it's also called the astronaut's secret. The astronaut's secret. So it was first named and kind of labeled in the 80s. There was a researcher, author, who started studying astronauts' experience of leaving the Earth's atmosphere, going up into space, and then when you get far enough and you look down at the Earth, and this is an experience which he found across nationalities, from astronauts from multiple different backgrounds, multiple different countries. They come up, you get into outer space, and you look down, and there's this tiny little blue dot. And the overview effect, as it's called, is just this feeling of awe and inner connection. You've come all this way, and then you look down, and you just feel this utter sense of connection with everyone in that little tiny dot. And that's fascinating. And unfortunately, it does have a half-life. So like many insights, you have an insight and then you hope that it stays forever. William Shatner, I think just last year, was able, Jeff Bezos took him up to outer space and allowed William Shatner, aka Captain Kirk, to look down at this little blue dot. And Captain Kirk said, this is the most amazing experience of his life. And it was just an utter sense of connection with everyone. And then not long after he came back down to Earth, there was this deep sense of loss as that initial impression, that initial insight, that initial epiphany and peak experience just faded with the days. So this comes to mind just as I've been practicing or trying to process this past week. So many of you will know, this past week we were able to receive two of our really great and impressive teachers from Thailand, Lompo Jandi and his upatak, his attendant monk, Ajahn Moshe. Ajahn Jandi has been in robes for 50 years, and Ajahn Moshe has been in robes for 25 years. And it was just a very sweet experience to spend time very close to them, seeing them in public, hearing them offer really profound teachings from what seemed like a very different space, and to be really close to them. There were times when we were just spending the afternoon or the evening or the morning together before we came out and saw anybody else, and we're just very close. And Ajahn Jandi seemed to be the same, no matter whether he's in a group of 100 people giving a big talk, or just with these 2 or 3 monks who he might not even know that well. But the through line, which probably many of you saw if you were able to meet him, was this brightness of his heart. He is so bright. And I spent some time looking at all these pictures. Alf is an amateur. He calls himself an amateur photographer, but he's a really good photographer, and he's got all these photos of Ajahn Lumpur Jandi, and you just see this light coming out of him. And it reminded me of the Christian iconography of halos, And you see this kind of almost like a comic circle surrounding the heads of these Christian saints. And you also see it in Buddhist iconography. It's said that the Buddha had a multicolored aura that people could notice when you were open to it. But I couldn't quite figure it out. I'm looking at these photos and I'm like, does he have greasy skin? Or is it like his eye creases? Or like, it doesn't seem like it's just the anatomy of his face. It seems something deeper. And it reminded me, myself and Ajahn Jodipalo, who's a really great monk. He's visited here before. He is a very unique monk in that he does Buddhist iconography and has painted hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of the same image of the Buddha or of Ajahn Mun, just again and again and again. And he and I actually were invited to the Christian monastery right next door to Abhayagiri, which is called Mount Tabor. And the abbot there, Father Damien, teaches iconography. All of their church, they build all their buildings, and the inside of their church is just filled. Every single spot on the wall is just filled with these icons that he's painted. And so we got to take this weekend-long icon painting workshop. And what you do is when you start to paint a icon, it's not like you start from the top and you just work your way down. You start with first you're painting on very natural materials. You're painting on wood with egg yolk acrylic. So very natural materials. And you get you coat the whole wood. And then, you're not working from the top down or from the bottom up, but you work from the back or the innermost layer first. So you have this layer of light, or this layer of brightness, this white color, which is just the outline of whatever the face is going to become. And then you let that dry, you let the whiteness, the clearness, the brightness dry, and then you paint the shadows over that. So you're building out the contours of a face from this light, from this inner light. And the effect that occurs when you see an icon that's been painted like this is it's not that the shadow is coming from the sky, or the shadow is coming from below, from a light, from a candle or anything. The shadow is actually projected outward because the light is inward. And it really is almost the exact effect that I would see just looking at Lumpur Jandi. And it was almost a tactile halo effect, just being near him. It was like he had this warmth which would just emanate from just being around him, sitting near him, sitting at his feet. And just a very nice experience being with him for the week. So we experienced, I experienced what I'm kind of labeling this Thai forest effect, the Thai forest effect. How is it that a human being can create this inner halo, can bring out this inner light? Can anybody do it? Or are you just necessarily born with the halo and then you got it or you don't? Or can you actually train in this brightness? And having just seen my own friends, just over the course, I've been living in monasteries for 20 years, and just normal American dudes coming and living in this place and just being harmless. We've got very strict rules that we keep to, and trying principles of communal harmony and trying to have love, seeing the detriment and the liability of an angry mind or a self-justifying mind. And just training in that. I've seen my friends just get brighter, and it makes sense to me that someone can get brighter in a lifetime like this. And of course, you don't have to be a monastic to have the Dhamma let your heart grow in this brightness. But I do think these principles of what I'm calling the Thai forest effect do have, there is something to be seen there. So just some of the things we did on Thursday before the outing, we got the idea, Ajahn Moshe, who has taken many senior Thai monks around to different Western countries, and he says it's always nice to, when you're visiting a foreign country, a foreign capital, to go to a high up place. So we took Lumpur Jandi and Ajahn Moshe to the Space Needle, and very high up place, and we got up there, and I had no idea what it was going to be like. I thought it would be just, kind of cheap tourist attraction or an expensive tourist attraction. And we got up there, and I was so happy just to see Lumpur Jandi, Ajahn Moshe really take their time. And we did do several laps around the viewing deck, but then Lumpur Jandi just stood there and just looked out. And it was fascinating. Within just the 15 or 20 minutes we were up there, it's probably the most number of people who I've ever had come up to me or Ajahn Nisabod to ask, what are you? What are you doing? What is this costume you've got on? And I think part of that is that you've gotten some altitude. People have gotten out of themselves. You're in a very spacious space with, in some parts, 360-degree light. So there's this spaciousness, there's this remove. Most of the people there were tourists, so there's a natural sense of curiosity. There's not all of the entrenched perceptions that we carry around with us around our houses and around our towns, and we know what we're going to see. We go to the same places, and it's boring. Whereas when you're a tourist, when you go visit a new place, there's a curiosity, so the mind is open, and it was a safe place. We've gotten to remove from perceptions of danger. So there's space, and there's light, and there's curiosity, and there's a sense of safeness, so people could come and approach us. And got a couple of interesting questions. One of them was Ajahn Kachana, the American monk whose mom and dad usually come here. We were walking, just he and I, just maybe 10 feet behind the senior Thai monks, and this woman comes up to us, and she's very excited, but also probably a little bit drunk. They had a full bar up there. I haven't seen a bar in a long time, but full bar. I'm like, what, on the Space Needle? You really need that? But yeah, so she's a little bit tipsy, a little bit drunk, and she comes and says, wow, are you guys monks in training? And my first thought, dude, come on, I'm a grown man. I'm not in training. I've been in monasteries 20 years. And so I actually said that. I'm like, no, we're real monks. We're like full monks. We're like out of training a little bit. And it was just surprising. And I think part of her perception, trying to track her logic, was like, okay, there are these Asian monks who are 10 feet in front of us. And then, these non-Asian monks who are kind of trailing. And it's like, okay, these guys are in training, and then maybe eventually they'll become Asian or something. I don't know what she was thinking, but people have these underlying biases that Buddhism, the Dhamma, is a foreign thing, and you see a monk, in a different context, and you're surprised. And the second question we got asked several times up in the Space Needle was just, what are you? And our response was, we are theravada forest monks, specifically in the Thai forest tradition. So that's our stock answer. And most people, that's really common for us. We're Thai forest tradition monks. And I thought to maybe just explain what that means, because it's possible that even if you've been coming here, that phrase, a Thai forest monk, Thai forest tradition, what actually is that? What is the Thai forest tradition? So to talk to that a little bit, in our monasteries, we have our big bowl, that's mine over there. It's a big bowl, but it's a small suitcase. We're able to keep our things in it when we're not eating out of it. So that's one of our requisites, and oftentimes we'll eat with our hands, but other times we'll eat with spoons. And for whatever historical reason, all of our monasteries in Thailand and in America and England, we use these stainless steel Chinese soup spoons, like you might find in hot and sour soup. And we just, wherever we are in Thailand, or where we call them Chinese spoons. And then someone got the great idea to ask one of our Chinese monks, what do you call the Chinese spoons in China? And he looked at us like we were just complete idiots. And he's like, we call them spoons. And it's kind of the same in in the Thai forest tradition. Like, what do you call the Thai forest tradition in Thailand? And you just call it the forest tradition, Sai Wat Pa. So it's just the tradition of the forest. But there is a significance, at least for us who weren't born in Thailand this life, to have this degree of remove. So it does tie back to that meditation that we were doing of allowing awareness to unhook. Oftentimes we're so caught up in the head, and we really do think that awareness is behind the eyes. It's just stuck behind the eyes. Somehow awareness, visual awareness, just has to be stuck in the brain. You're seeing down. If you're watching the breath, even it's almost you're looking down at the breath. But to be able to unhook and have this remove, unhook, drop, to open, to see, to include, and to let be. So all of us who weren't born in Thailand and have come to this Thai forest tradition, we've crossed an ocean, we've crossed continents, and we're going to something which is different. We're getting a remove from our native cultures, our native habitats, our native habits. And that's really good. And still, Sai Wat Pa in Thailand, it still has meaning in that it took place. What this Thai forest tradition is, it was a reinvigoration of the existing forest spirit that came from the time of the Buddha. So you see this through the course of Buddhist history, is that the Buddha and all of his monks at his time were largely living very natural existences, living at the roots of trees, living in forests, living in forest monasteries, or sometimes very simple huts. And then as Buddhism comes through time, you see a lot of inspiring monastics, and then kings start supporting monasteries, and there becomes this opulence. There becomes this wealth in the monasteries, which is attended to with a degree of laxity in practice. And then when things get lax, when the monasteries get rich, you'll have a kind of a rogue, like a commando monk or nun, who will go back to the forests and reinvigorate the initial tradition of living very simply, living a truly renunciate life, and actually attaining to the levels of awakening which are really accessible when you're not enmeshed and engaged and totally trapped and ensnared by the things which ensnare us in a society, certainly in an opulent society. And then that forest tradition will be invigorated for some decades, hopefully several generations, and then they get rich because they're practicing well. And then this kind of cycle of increase and decrease are going back and forth tradition. And Ajahn Mun, who is a monk who alive in the latter part of the 1800s and the early part of the 1900s, he was the real grandfather of this Thai forest tradition. And he and all of this early generation of monks are not in central Thailand. They're not in Bangkok. They're not even in Chiang Mai, the second biggest city. They're up in the forest. They're in northeast Thailand. They're in backcountry, in the less affluent part of Thailand, really the country area of Thailand. And many of these Ajahn, certainly Ajahn Mun, Lompu Sao, Lompu Ubali, Lompu Wan, Lompu Khao, all of these great teachers, or most of them, were raised from their families were farmers, they lived in simple villages, they lived simple lives, and then they ordained and continued to live very simple lives, but lives which gave time for meditation, time for perspectives, even if they were from this backcountry of Thailand, the woods of Thailand. From these villages, still they'll go out to the forests. So this is the forest aspect of the Thai forest tradition. And the Buddha said that as long as there are monks and nuns, practitioners who go back to the forest and meditate at the roots of trees, so long as there are practitioners practicing this degree of geographical solitude, so long there will be awakening possible in the world. The attainment of the Noble Eightfold Path will be possible. So the Buddha really saw the value in going back to nature, going back to simple settings. And this early generation of monks did just that. And we read their biographies. So myself, like many people these days, certainly many monks, we come to Buddhism through meditation. We do a meditation retreat. which is usually inside of a city or just outside of a city, but you're meditating with a bunch of other people and according to a schedule. And I was really inspired by that. It had a lot of, for me, big insights into where peace can be found in the heart. Because it's in the heart. It is in the heart where we find peace, this inner light. And seeing that and practicing in those traditions, a meditation tradition in the city for a while, but then reading the biography of Ajahn Mun by Longta Mahabua. So Ajahn Mun, I do believe, and many people in our tradition believe he was enlightened. So this is someone, and this is enlightenment in the Buddhist tradition, is that it's possible to fully transcend greed, anger, and delusion. And most of us, we can practice. It is totally true and valid and the real practice for us to know greed, anger, and delusion and just not act from them. But when we do that, over time, just as when we first give up cigarettes, we want them and we crave them intensely for a period of time. But after some years, it's like, oh, I actually don't even want a cigarette anymore. And so you just extrapolate that principle over time. I've been of an anger habit, and my whole family or our whole culture has guided and rewarded, and we have whole nation leaders who seem to be rewarded for their blatant displays of uninhibited greed, anger, and delusion. And so that's where we're coming from, but being able to see and able to believe maybe that's possible to completely transcend that. And even to start that I just don't need to act on all of my greed and anger, and to be able to see that it does lessen over time, and to be able to believe that, okay, I've seen in the course of, hopefully you've seen in the course of however long you've been practicing, that the inner fires of craving and aversion are just lessening over time. So maybe it is possible to completely transcend greed and anger and delusion, to get this removed, this forest mind, which is utterly cool. This is a place you often hear this in monasteries, people coming from the city, coming from their jobs, and you come to a forest monastery, and it's like you just step foot into the monastery, and you just feel this sense of coolness. My first monastery that I visited was Wat Metta, and I had been traveling and traveled all the way from Cincinnati, Ohio, where I was from. If you're from Cincinnati, let me know. We can bond on that point. But coming from Cincinnati across the country, getting this sense of remove, I'm hitchhiking, take the bus, and then I'm hitchhiking from the bus stop to the monastery. I get a ride from a guy named Jesus, which is Jesus, which is great. Get a ride from Jesus to the monastery. It didn't take me all the way. I'm continuing. It's a hot day. And I get there, and there's the monastery entrance. And I just have my rucksack. I'd given everything else away. Feverish heart. I've been searching, coming closer and closer to the forest. And I get there, and there's the monastery gate. And I get just inside, and I bow, just right inside on the driveway. And even though there was, for some reason, they put their dumpster, they put their dumpster right next to the main front gate, which is uninspiring. But it did not uninspire me in that moment. There's trash in the world, but there's also this clean, clear forest, cool space of the heart. And so I had that experience, and many people do as well, coming into a forest monastery. And we hope to be able to provide that with Clear Mountain whenever we have land, coming into a place of natural beauty. So this Thai forest tradition, it's a tradition. When you come out to a forest place, one of our teachers, Ajahn Siripanyo, he lives in a very remote forest jungle on the border between Thailand and Burma called Dao Dam. And yeah, it really is. You look out from the top of the mountain and you don't see any other signs of human habitation other than the very simple rudimentary meditation hall that you're sitting in. And you hear wild gibbon, and you hear these huge birds, and it's actually quite loud. It's a rainforest. But you look out, and you go back to your meditation platform, and all you see is green and brown natural colors, and the only shapes you see are totally organic, formed, rounded, non-angular spaces and signs. So you look out and there's no angularity. When was the last time you experienced non-angularity? It's probably been a while. And he says that he comes from living there for months on end, and then he comes to Bangkok, and he's just utterly struck by almost the violence, the psychic violence of living in a place where all you see is right angles and the sharpness to a sensitive mind that's been allowing itself to settle, coming into a place which is utterly unnatural in a certain way. Yeah, you feel the sharpness of it. You feel the sharpness. It's almost visually jarring. So coming back to the forest, or the mind's forest, the mind's light, and it is a tradition. We've all come into a tradition. It's not just forest. This is not just free-flowing commune living. We have lots of rules. We have so many rules. You meet a teacher like Lumpur Jandi, who his inner radiance is just so manifest, and you think, gosh, that guy is just utterly free. He just seems utterly free. And one might think that an utter outward freedom that manifests so clearly and radiantly would come from not having any constraints. That's certainly like a view which I thought at a certain point in my life, late teens, early 20s. It's like, okay, real freedom comes from no restraints. Total freedom exterior leads to total freedom interior. And if you've ever tried that, come on, you got to be realistic. It just you just burn when we haven't yet been able to put like some coolness, bring some coolness to the inner fires. We go out to the forest and we're still burning, but we can train in being in these cool places. So coming out to the forest, coming out to a tradition, to coming out to places where people keep the precepts, having a place in your house which is truly sacred. You have this, it's called choice architecture, the way that certainly companies design spaces. There's a very clear intention to get you to buy as much as possible, where they put the signs and the advertisements and the most blatant, intriguing and kind of pulling outward signs. Advertisers know how to do that, how to pull the heart in that direction. But we can do this choice architecture and be intentional with the way that we design our own spaces and our own lives and our own weeks. Do you have a place in your house, even if it's just a corner, that has a meditation cushion, or even if you don't have a cushion, this is the corner where I meditate. And if you've got a shrine, if you've got some symbol of the higher element, that which you're inclining your life towards, if you've got that very apparent in your space, and maybe you meditate around there as well, that's your own choice architecture. That's the forest in your own home. And making the time to go out to natural settings, to get away from all the sound and the piercing angularity of the spaces in which most of us live, to come out, spend time in nature. Go and visit a monastery where there is this lineage, this through line of safety and harmony and peace, and training in being with ourselves, finding that forest within. So, this Thai forest effect, it seems kind of like this overview effect, is that if you just keep training the mind in seeing, as Lumpur Jandi said, that there are two basic aspects of a heart. There's that which knows, and the objects one knows. You've got the mind or consciousness, and you've got mind objects. And those, a big part of practice is just naturally allowing those to naturally separate. The mind isn't inherently problematized. The mind isn't inherently caught up and strung out. We can learn how to separate these things, or just in the present moment even, just seeing that the mind isn't enmeshed. There's a part of the mind, big part of the mind. There's a big mind which is actually bigger than whatever seemingly all-encompassing problem has taken over our whole lives. We can zoom out from that. The aperture of our minds, just like the aperture of camera, has just zoomed in, and all we see is our own our own problem, my problem, the problems of I, and just, okay, zoom out, panoramic, global awareness. So learning how to tap into that, and that's an inner Thai, i.e., some remove forest tradition, and the Thai forest effect is that we can achieve this. It's not just that we stay in the forest and the heart gets cooler and cooler, but there is this belief that it's possible to totally transcend greed, anger, and delusion. It's like a spaceship leaving the Earth's atmosphere. When you achieve that escape velocity, that's like stream entry. There's no going back. You're no longer subject to, at stream entry, the doubt or the utter belief in personality view or attachment to rites and rituals. You've escaped that level of human attachment. And that's a belief for most of us, but our teachers and the scriptures, they say that it's possible. And when you meet teachers like Ajahn, you think, oh, if they haven't achieved escape velocity, then they're somewhere close. And maybe we can do that too. So leave the talk there.
Han damayang damakatayo sadhu karang dadamase sadhu 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 anumodani.
Okay, so anybody who needs to stand up or shift postures, you're welcome to do that now. And we'll also have time for questions, or if you have comments, feel free to raise your hand here, and I think Miles will bring you a microphone, and that way people on Zoom can hear you. And Zoom people, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. And maybe Trenton, if you could change the Zoom to the showing everybody view, that would be great to let everybody feel close and connected. Yeah, Peter. Peter, I have your books. I'll give them back at some point. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your talk, Ajahn. Really appreciated it. I just wanted to ask you, just because this is something I've noticed for probably quite a long time, but a lot recently, is just you talked a lot about the importance of the forest itself in this tradition, and I've found that there is something about just the forest itself that seems to bring out certain things. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's very supportive, and it's just feeling connected to life in a bigger way. So if you could say anything more about how that fits into, the importance that the Buddha placed on and in this tradition. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And our Thai forest tradition, as you might guess, so many of Ajahn Chah's teachings, as Lumpur Jandi was saying on Thursday, really are just such natural teachings. He's got a book called A Tree in the Forest. I'm not sure if we have any copies here, but it's all of his similes. And he's not necessarily just finding similes from the suttas or the Buddha's discourses, what's in the scriptures, but just it's all these things around him and around all the people who were living in these villages in northeast Thailand. And for us, similes and metaphors about trees, how trees grow and how trees rot, and just the natural insights that you can see when you're living in the forest. You can see the life cycle of plants and animals, flora, fauna. You just see that, there is this birth, aging, sickness, death are just so utterly natural. And in our societies and our cities, they're just so problematized and hidden away all of the old folks' homes or the nursing homes, the hospitals. They're these sanitized places which most of us don't want to think about most of the time. Whereas when you're in the forest, you see animals getting sick or being born, and you see the violence also. Everything isn't necessarily all, cuddly kittens. There's mutual devouring going on in the forest. And I think one, in my mind, as I was thinking of this Thai forest effect, one difference I feel between the overview effect is that the overview effect is temporary, and it is this awe and sense of, as I'm just reading about it, it does seem like a bit of a Pollyanna-ish interconnectedness, whereas the Thai forest tradition is a much more grounded interconnectedness. Like Lumpur Jundi, he can turn on that inner light. Like if he gets the sense from the people around him, like they need some encouragement, he can turn on that warmth. And if he feels like someone is just being ego, trying to get attention, he can just turn it off and just like not feed someone's ego. And I think that's a lesson that you can learn in the forest as well. That's something that Lumpur Cha could do as well, just seeing the time and place for different practices, and that there's a time for the utter brilliance of outward shows of loving kindness, and there's a place for equanimity and just being able to sit quietly and not having to stroke the egos of everybody. But I really appreciate that you bring out it is just natural, and that's why I think you find in all these different traditions, if there's a forest aspect to it, just nature writers often write so deeply about truth because they've lived so closely to the same nature that these meditators are seeing. So, please. Tim?
Thank you so much for your talk and meditation. So you mentioned mind and then awareness. Is mind awareness? Are they the same thing? When we think of objects of mind, are we thinking of objects of awareness? And then you speak of the light, the inner light, which can grow with practice. And but I also think of awareness as light, awareness as illumination. And so are we actually doing something with our awareness that is causing more light somehow?
You can do all of that. So like even in the Pali Canon, the word chitta, which is sometimes in English translated as mind, sometimes as heart, like this version of the chanting book, translates that with the heart imbued with loving kindness. The Pali is chitta there. And there are other chanting books where the abbot, just for whatever reason, prefers mind. So those chanting books will have the exact same translation, but put mind there. And when I was talking about it during the meditation, I was using, for the most part, mind as synonymous with awareness. And I think the Tibetan tradition really points to the luminous, three different characteristics of mind or awareness, of luminosity, as you point out, of this unconfinedness, and then just this insubstantiality. So those are three interesting aspects of mind which the Tibetan tradition draws out. And the Thai forest tradition, when you read about Lompu Man, Hil and Ajahn Mahabua, they'll use this word chitta in a much more broad way to refer to different strata of the mind. So you could say, in the third foundation of mindfulness, when there's greed, one knows there's greed in the mind. The mind is greedy. When there's hatred, one knows the mind has hate. When there's no greed, when there's no hatred, the mind knows that there's no greed or hatred in the mind. So sometimes it's talking about a level of mind which is enmeshed with greed or anger or non-greed, non-anger, or there's this one knows, this knowing of the mind. So in that way of speaking, it seems like they're different levels. But I think it's all of us, we just keep taking this backward step, and then we might realize that, what I thought was, I'm watching the breath, but I'm not even I'm watching it from behind the eyes, like a little homunculus, like a little creature behind the eyes. And I'm just down, 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 breath, 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 breath. And you realize, actually, I don't have to know. I can know the mind from a much more spacious place. The mind isn't in the brain necessarily as we experience it. So, yeah, just stepping back. Is this what I think is a mind? Is that an ego? And is there a place which is less attached than that, which has more freedom than that? And if you say, oh yeah, actually there's a higher strata of mind, or a more inclusive strata of mind, in either direction you go that way, you might feel there's more luminosity, more spaciousness, more insubstantiality. So, yeah, take that as your metric as you step back. Are things getting brighter or more spacious or not? Yeah.
It looks like there's someone on Zoom. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, please, David. You're muted. Oh, you can't unmute? Okay, maybe you could type your question into the, or actually, Trenton, maybe, okay, try now. There we go.
There we go. Actually, I'm just sharing something that someone else typed in. And this is from Jay Rajagopalan, I believe. It says, Dear Ajahn, thanks for the inspiring talk. Sadhu, sadhu. Regarding the use of the word unhook today, during the meditation time, do you think that the word unentangle can be used in the same context in meditation to position the mind/cognitive states? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David, and thank you, Jay. Yeah, I mean, that's just an English word. There's nothing necessarily magic about it. That framework of unhook, drop, open, see, include, know, and let be. This is from a teaching from an American Dhamma teacher named Locke Kelly, who's kind of in the Dzogchen tradition. And for myself, I feel each one of those. I gave a whole talk on each of those 6 aspects: unhook, drop, open, see, include, know, and let be, at a Bhayagiri called Awareness Calisthenics. And being able to do these different moves, because the mind can know from and know through and know in different localities. And for me, the English word isn't so important. I do find unhook is helpful, but when I was giving that talk at a Bhayagiri, I was actually giving Pali equivalents. So for unhook, I was actually correlating it with the word viraga, which in Pali means unimpassioned or dispassion. Raga is collate with the English word rouge, like that which is coloring the mind. It's a Pali Sanskrit word for dye, D-Y-E. And vitraga is the de-dyeing. It's like you dilute all this intense, passionate color with, more coolness. So viraga or unentangledness, or really experiment what does it for you. But really just what's most important, way more than the words, is the actual movement of the heart, of the mind, to be able to, if you just notice that you're habitually tensed up in your face, or tensed up around the heart, or you get into a habitual argument with your spouse or your kids, and that's your habitual tense spot, can you unhook from that? And feeling where it is in the body is great. And if you can disentangle the heart from that tension, almost automatically it can come that the body just naturally, you can say unhook or unattach, viraga, and the physical body can respond to that mental movement. So, thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Jay. Yeah, please.
Thank you. As you were talking today, you triggered an event that occurred to me yesterday. I was traveling to visit with a friend, probably my dearest friend in the world. And I frequently visit with this friend. And I noticed as I came off of the Aurora Bridge and turned into the way that'll lead down into the neighborhood, I had this feeling throughout my body, and this is what you triggered as you were talking about sinking into the body and feeling things. I had this feeling, totally pre-verbal awareness, this is the way I go to visit my friend. In fact, I had just for a moment this line out of, I think it's My Fair Lady, I'm on the street where you live. If you are familiar with that song, it's just, the character is telling us how it feels to be here. And so I recognized that, but it was a pre-verbal awareness, and then it became that. And then it moved into one more level of awareness. And I visualized a herd of elephants and the matriarch, you know, that they live in female or led groups. And I thought, this is how the matriarch knows that she's leading them into the right place. This is where they know they get their food, they get their water. And it's just a pre-verbal knowledge of what's going on and this sense of certainty. And that was what you triggered with helping us go down into the body. So I just thought I would share that with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I was just talking with Jeremy, was driving the monks, me and Lumpo Jundi, to the airport yesterday, or at some point this past week. Things were a bit of a blur, actually. But started asking about something that Jeremy does, is this sensory deprivation tanks. Get a show of hand. Who here has gotten into a sensory deprivation tank? Okay, floating. Yeah, you go inside of this pod, and there's like about this much water, and it's got a bunch of salt in it. You can just float there, and they close the door, and there's like very little light, and you feel like you're floating. And we asked Ajahn Jundi about that, and he said, yeah. Yeah. I think actually maybe he had even tried it once, but he said, yeah, that's just a place where the mind can go. You can train in it. And Jeremy was saying that for him, just living in the city, he's got it's not a terribly intense job that he has, but the tension in the body just fills up, and you get this pre-verbal just anxiety that's just trapped in the body, and it's going to this these sensory deprivation tanks, and then the body can just relax. And yeah, hopefully we can find that inner tank inside, and yeah, the mind can go there, and it doesn't, when we train in it, we don't necessarily need to even soak in the water. But yeah, thank you for sharing that experience, and I think that's really common, that just all the tension which builds up from being surrounded by noise and cacophony all the time.